Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today I'm going to be taking a look at a Gigabyte Aorus graphics card. Oh yes we are, it's been a while since I've said that. Anyway, so Aorus GTX1080 Ti or Ti if you fancy doing up your top, fancy doing up your top collar for it. Anyway, I'm going to be taking a look at this. It's one of the big beefy ones, it's not any Founders Edition malarkey, it's massive. But what we really need to do is bring you in so that I can talk to you about all the cores and the clock speeds, and we're going to strip it down as well. So it's going to be a good one. Go and make yourself a cup of tea, get your biscuits, get your crisps, your chips, or whatever you would like to call it, depending on where you are in this wonderful world of ours. So a quick look at it in our test rig, just to kind of show you the colours and where the lighting is. I'm going to admit straight away, because everyone is going to say it would look better if it was in the side of the system like this. And I would agree. If it was there, it would look a lot better, but this is the angle I have to show you so that you can see the X-brace underneath lit up and the lights on the side. Now, a couple of things to point out here is it is all customizable. Yes, we did have a little pop-up on Windows then. It's all customizable in the software. So you can manually set it, you can make it dance, you can make it change colours in certain ways. There's lots of options depending on what you want to do. Cool thing is in this mode is it's just cycling through the colours, so it does give you a good idea. Now the red does come up really nice and deep, which is a good thing. I'm not sure how it'll end up coming out on the camera, because it does seem to go past red quite quickly in this cycle mode. But the other cool thing is you do have this little light here which is RGB as well, and that's just basically there, and when the fans have stopped, because it's in passive mode, you know, I'm sticking my fingers up in here, that little light comes up, and then once you put any sort of amount of load on it, it does go away. I've just started Unigine off the camera, so once that kind of kicks in and starts cycling around, you'll see it disappear because it will get warm enough. So when it's in the rig, it does look quite overbearing when it's in your hands. To let you know as well, Unigine is running. And we've still not hit any fans yet, which is, again, it's quite cool, because on less demanding games, depending on what ones you play, the fans may not ever kick in unless you've been playing it for a long time or you're in a very warm room. But it looks very kind of overbearing in your hand. And in the rig, I don't know, it's got a very strange way of kind of calming you down. But it does obviously have that extra slots worth of girth. So if you were going to think about buying two of these, you do have to be very careful. So the Unigine light, the fan light went out just as I hit record then, sod's law. So as you can see, it does overhang into this third slot a fair bit. It's not 3 slots on the actual mounting bracket, but it does come over a fair bit. Now because of it, most motherboards you have a 3-slot gap anyway, so you could get the second card in here and there is room to get it in, but it would be incredibly close to the card below. So you do need to think about that. If you've got a normal board with a normal 3-slot gap, this is just the Strix X99, you could get 2 in, but I'm not sure that you'd want to, because the top one would get very warm. I think if you're going to be thinking about buying 2 of these and it's a new system that you're thinking about getting, you want to try and make sure that you've got a 4-slot gap between the 2 cards, that they can breathe a bit better. Unless, of course, you're going water cooling, and then it just won't matter, because you won't have to worry about all this extra width. So people have been asking about the test configuration that we use. So just to run you through, it is an X99 board. We've got 32 gigabyte of 3200 megahertz memory in there. We have a 6850 at 4.4 gigahertz. We have the Strix X99 board, a 1000 watt power supply, which is, yes, it is overkill for this setup, as you'll see in a bit, but we use the same power supply throughout. And then the drives that we're using, we have a Force LX 512 gigabyte drive as our operating system drive, and then we have 2 480 gigabyte Force LS normal solid state drives in RAID 0 for our game boot drive. Other than that, there's no M.2s or anything like that in there, and the cooling is a H100i V2, and yes, that's about it. Oh, the case, because people always seem to be asking about the case. we do run it in a normal case, and when we do our thermal testing and our game testing, we do run it with the door on as well. And it's a Corsair 760T, and I've just put some stickers on the outside. It is quite a big, beefy card. I mean, the giveaway really here is that there's your 2 slot that your normal graphics card would be. It's not quite 3 slots, but to be honest with you, it's not far off. I'll show you it in a rig in a moment as well, so that you can get a good look at sizing. But it may affect your motherboard choice if you're thinking about buying more than one. Anyway, so looking around, it is quite beefy. It's also quite an aggressive looking card as well. There's quite a lot of things sticking out, sticking in. It's not just kind of a plain looking thing. You've got the big X here, which does light up. Again, I will show you that in a bit. Got the 300mm fans on it. One of them, quite weirdly, is the opposite way round as well, with a secondary set of fan blades on it, which if you're going to have it kind of upright in your rig, I don't know whether it'll drive your OCD crazy or not. I've kind of got used to it. Fan blades as well are very close, or at least that's the way it looks when you first look at it. But it's the secondary set of fan blades that are close, and the one underneath actually overlaps, so you've almost got 4 fans. It's quite strange. You've obviously got this kind of eagle kind of logo, which is all about the Aorus right now. But looking around, I mean, look at the size of those heat pipes. They are ginormous. They're all down this end as well, and when you get down in and dirty and look at the actual cooler itself, there's a lot of material going on in there. But I will take it apart to show you, but we're looking at the outside for now. So it's predominantly black, but you do have these kind of brushed gunmetal-y sections on it. And the one thing that is probably one of the few things that I'm not too sure about are these orange bits on it. I don't know whether that's being carried over from them, because obviously Asus went orange with like the Maximus Extreme assembly and their top end cards, and that seemed to be the point that Gigabyte jumped on orange. Now, I'm not too sure about it. I think they would have done better with keeping it slightly more understated. The only thing that I do have to say in its defence is the orange does kind of tie in with the copper here and on the bare heat pipes, as most places now are nickel plating them to take it away. Something else that we can talk about while we're around this side is it does have an internal HDMI port, which I know a lot of people are going to be going like, what? But some cases now do have HDMI pass-through, so you might not have to stick it all the way around the back of your case and all that sort of stuff. You can plug it into the graphics card on the inside, so it's an option for you anyway. And also, when we get round the back, you do get 3 display ports, which people with multi-monitors, especially if you're going to be running G-Sync, will rejoice. But you do still get a further 2 HDMIs round the back as well. Also, one of the things I will say is you can either have this DVI or this HDMI. You cannot run both of these. So that's something just to keep in mind. So there are a lot of connections around the back when you think about it. NVIDIA did take the DVI away, and Gigabyte have decided to keep it there, but you obviously do have to share it with HDMI. But there's a lot of connections around there. Get a nice back plate. It's kind of nice and smooth. These aren't stickers, these are painted as well, so if you don't like the orange, there's no way to get rid of them. But you can even see with the back plate how much steel that the card protrudes out from the edges. But it's not that wide. A lot of the cards, when they come out from the slot here, they stick out loads more. And this one, it doesn't. They've kept the card relative, apart from this stick out part here. They've kept it relatively thin, but then they've gone depth-wise. You can see there though, there's a big chunk of copper on the base of the main part of the cooler. Okay, so we'll start with the back plate. You've got the copper section here. It was throwing me a second because I was looking for the screws, but the screws are actually to hold the copper part on. Now this does come into contact with the back of the card round here. These sections are left open, strangely. You have a look, you've got the sections there where they're left open, and then the outside part actually comes in contact, and then you have that going in contact. So basically just around the back of the main core of the card itself, this comes in contact with the back plate, so you can get a lot of heat through. But then you do also get this strip of MOSFETs in contact with the card as well, and all these the back of the power reg areas around here. So you've got MOSFETs, back of memory actually it is, I do apologise, around here. That's all in contact with the PCB itself. There are on this side second sets of MOSFETs and power regs, but on this bit they're not on them, so maybe these extra parts are on the extreme. You can see that there are some copper areas that have not been utilised, I think is the best term. But anyway, you can see the back plate and what effect that has. You can also see the little part here. This is the RGB connector, which isn't on this card, but you do get an RGB back plate on the extreme. So there's a couple of things to pick up. Then around this side, lots and lots of busyness. Massive power delivery area down this section. Something to consider that there is an option within the firmware of this card is with most GTX 1080s you can normally go up to about 100 plus 120% on the power boost or the power percentage slider when you use the overclock tools. This actually has the ability to go up to 150%. You do need to consider though, as I'll talk to you in a bit, being able to add all that extra power doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get better overclocks, because it is always going to come down to the silicon lottery here. We'll talk in depth about that in a bit. So a nice look at the bare PCB, nice shiny actually black PCB, and then the back of the card itself. Now you can see with all these extra pads, you can see that they've done an area here where they flatted this part off so that they could put a thermal pad on it, and it's to cool these two caps, I think, or was it something over here? I can't remember. I'll have to have a look when I put it back on. I know I've got to put this thermal pad back on as it's sticking to my finger. Right, anyway, so there's a lot of contact between the main PCB and the electrical components of the card and the heatsink, rather than just blowing fans over the top. So they've obviously been very cautious about cooling. All of the memory is actually in direct contact with the main cooling part of the card as well, rather than have little add-ons around the outside. The main cooling section here, you can see, is in direct contact with the memory and the core itself. There is actually there's a lot of weight to this, sometimes there's not. So they've spent a lot of time on the cooling. As you can see, these big bolts as well, because there's big strips of aluminium through this section here. So basically it's in between all the fins, and then they bolt it all together, give you better cooling. So design wise, there's a heck of a lot going on with this cooler. You can actually see all the separate wires as well for all the RGB bits and the fan bits and all sorts going on. So yeah, I'm quite impressed with the design and the look of that. It's a pretty looking PCB too. Also, with a nerd head on, what I can see with this card is it's all quite flat, and the only real tall area that we've got are the caps over here. So this could make it quite easy for the the aftermarket guys like EK and Bits Power and like to make water blocks for it as well. So that's going to be quite an interesting one. You can also see they're still missing RAM slot. I don't know why they don't just add it. Why don't they just make it 12? I bet here's some gay NVIDIA thing that they're not allowed. Okay, so on to some performance numbers, and the first things that I do need to say to you is if you would like more information, more pictures about it all taken apart, more results, because there are a lot more results as well. You can go to the OC3D website and click the link underneath, click the card, or just put in oc3d.net and find the Gigabyte review on there. So go and do that if you're actually interested. If not, you're just stuck with me yabbering on. Now, the first thing we're going to yabber on about is clocks and speeds and overclocking and all that sort of stuff. I've shown you the rig that I put it in. It is more than capable of powering this, and it's probably going to be got a bit more grunt than what most of you are going to end up dropping into. Said most of you, I know there's going to be those of you out there with a big wallet that are going to have something a little bit more special, but anyway, don't take offence to me saying most. So clocks, you do get it sent in what they're going to be calling like a gaming mode. But if you install the software off the CD, you can then flick it into overclock mode. Now, out of the box, what it does is it's the GPU clock. Now, there are stages to this. So I apologise if I'm preaching to the converted or the choir or however you want to put it. I'm just going to try and discuss a few points to explain how stuff goes and reasons why a lot of people don't understand what they're actually running at as well. So out of the box, the core clock is 1569 megahertz with a boost of 1683 megahertz. Now the thing is what a lot of you don't realise, is if you open GPU-Z and hit sensors, you can actually then start clicking the sensor buttons to go to min, max and average. So if we were to look at the maximum and the average on this standard clock, what you actually end up getting as a peak boost is 1961.5 megahertz with an average of 1859 megahertz. Why is it overclocking itself? Well, that's GPU boost 3. And that is why when you think to yourself, oh, it's not got much overclocking, it's because it's near enough putting 250 to 300 megahertz on the top for you without you even knowing. Now that's the standard mode. If you put the software on your rig and you actually put it into the OC mode, it then jumps up to 1589 megahertz with a boost of 1703. Then what you end up with is nearly 2000 megahertz is your maximum boost, and your average comes in at 1896. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about now, and I'm just going to let you know, because I know people are going to harp on about this when we start looking at the graphs and in the results. So the average clock does make a lot of difference. And you may see in the graphs in a bit that the Strix is a bit in front on some of the graphs. Well, that's pretty much, you can put it down to the fact that the peak boost and the average boost, they were slightly above. For argument's sake, this come in at basically 1900 megahertz. So the Gigabyte is 1900 megahertz. The Strix was doing 1970. This was doing 2000 megahertz and the Strix was doing 2040. Well, there's a £50 price difference there as well. But the most important thing is I did run them both in OC mode. Now I'm only getting very technical and talking about that because I know people are going to say, how is the Strix quicker? So it's just easier for me to talk to you and tell you about it. So you know now, it's all good. So you've got that sorted out. But like I said, you do need to remember is that this is going to be £759, which the Strix is 810, I think, 820. I can't remember. So there's a big old price difference there. And like I said, I'm only telling you about it so you know when we get into the graphs and you can make your own mind up. Overclocking wise, what you can do though, or what I did, is you do need to remember that most of it is about moving the power percentage slider. Don't really need to touch volts with these anymore, and you haven't with any of the Pascal or the Maxwell stuff. So most of it was done with the percentage slider. It's a good rule of thumb to remember as well. If you want to overclock these, that's where it is. Don't just go wanging it up to the maximum though. Most maximums of most cards is about 120%. You move it up from 100 and then you can go up to 120. The Gigabyte ones though, they can, or the Aorus ones, I'm going to have to get used to saying that, can go up to 150%. One thing I can say though is with this, once I got to 120, pushing beyond that point didn't actually yield any better overclocks or averages though. So that's one of the reasons why I said don't just stick it to the maximum, because you're going to be sticking loads more power into it than these are. So yeah, you just end up making it hot, and if you put too much in, you can make it unstable as well. And let's face it, could end up shortening the lifespan of your card as well. But with about 120% extra on with 120% on the power slider, I did manage to offset the boost by 70 megahertz. it gave me about 35 megahertz on the average, which kind of worked out kind of well. I'm seeing the colours changing because of that. It's another thing on the camera, it keeps turning off. I do need to change it. So with you get about another 35 megahertz on the average, which gave it a really kind of tasty boost. But one of the things we're not going to, because of GPU Boost 3, as I've explained to you, it's overclocking the card for you by 300 megahertz as it is. So for us to worry about 35 megahertz extra is kind of, it's another day's worth of testing, and to be fair, I've stopped doing it. I'll certainly tell you about it, but I'm not going to go retesting after 35 megahertz because, and the other thing, so I'm stressing to you so much about how much the card is kind of overclocking itself anyway. That's a standard feature with them now. So if you do want to tweak, that's lovely, but the majority of you are going to fit it and you're going to forget about it and you're going to tweak. Some of you are going to moan that I can only turn it up by 50 megahertz. Well, I've kind of explained to you why now, so it's all good. So anyway, that was your overclock. When we move on into our testing though, one of the things we can do is with the, when we drop it in, we can see here that the Aorus does kind of sit kind of nicely. When I've spoken to you about the average boost and the peak boost, it's clearly quicker than a Founders Edition, which you kind of would expect it to be. It's not that much more expensive though. And it's just going to be one of those things where in the graphs, it's pretty much just behind the Asus. And it's just behind the Asus because it's just behind in the clocks. That's just the way it's going to be. So when we flick through, so that's 3D Mark, that's the Firestrike Ultimate, Firestrike, it's just the mental one, Ultra, whatever you want to call it. It's the same with Unigine, we can flick those through. Ghost Recon Wildlands is one that we started testing recently, and we do it in all the 3 resolutions as well, but again here it sits kind of nicely in the graphs where you would expect it to. Hitman, it was the same thing. Ashes of the Singularity. The one thing here with Ashes of the Singularity is we've arranged this by 1080 and it kind of sits, you know, about the same as the Founders Edition with 1080. But the thing I would like to draw your attention to with this is to look at the 4K result, which is the smaller one in the Aorus bars, and you can actually see that it's clearly in front of the Founders Edition on this one. We've been organising them by 1080 to get to the point where, you know, they're just kind of like spazzing out at 1080 and you are getting to the limits. So there's a lot of results there for you to kind of mull it over, and the most important thing to think about is you can go and have a look on the Overclock 3D website. We've got lots of other games. We're actually going through a process now where we're looking at other games to roll in as well, because to be honest with you, and if I am perfectly honest with you, I'm bored with testing the same stuff. So I want to put a couple of new ones in. But it's like a lot of people say to me about GTA 5. Now we may bring GTA 5 back, but we took it away because the updates were changing the results so much. They were pointless because the graphs were utterly meaningless. So this is why we have to pick and choose, and that's just so that we can do a better job for you guys. It's not because we don't want to, or we're favouring a specific brand, or, you know, we don't want to use Uplay, we just want to use Steam. It's nothing like that. It's just because we need them to be consistent. And GTA 5 is one of them that it just was not consistent at all, to the point where we stopped bothering. Anyway, so conclusion. Yes, I haven't even had that much coffee today. I don't even know what's going on. So long and short of it is, Performance Award was where I was with it, because yes, it is just behind the Asus, but it did really, really well. But then Gigabyte chirped in right at the last minute and they said, did you realise that some of the retailers had put the wrong price up? Because I thought it was £800 and I was like, no, I didn't know. Yeah, it's supposed to be $759, and I was like, what? And then suddenly, and I've saved this for the end for a good reason, suddenly you go back to the graphs and you look at the difference between this and the Strix and you're like, it's 50 quid cheaper. It's 50 quid cheaper. Are you kidding me? So then I was like, yes, it does get Performance Award, but to be honest with you, and it's a strange one because people, when I say this out loud, people are going to go, it's £759, are you nuts? Yes, it's £759, but if you're just looking at 1080 Ti's, it is actually quite good value for money. You get a massive cooler, you get RGB, it's quiet, it's cool, and it's 50 quid cheaper than one of the other cards, which is pretty much as quick of when you stick it in overclock mode. So I do think it does deserve a performance and a value for money. But the thing that I'm going to stress here is that if you do want to have a play around with it, not a lot of people do, but if you do want to have a play around with it, you will get it to roughly the same levels, maybe a little bit quicker than the Strix anyway. But you're always going to get hit and miss with the playing around with it, because some people will be really lucky, some people won't. Now 50 megahertz doesn't sound like a lot, but the thing that you do have to remember is GPU boost has already done about 250 to 300 for you. So when you add it all in, there is actually a fair amount there. It's almost like NVIDIA needs you to be able to turn GPU boost off so that you can see how far you can push it yourself. But if you actually pay attention to what I said to you about the GPU-Z, you can see the difference anyway, and it's something that not a lot of people are covering, and I can't understand why, because it's like, oh yeah, it's 1700 megahertz boost. Shut up, most of them are running at about 1900 to 2000 megahertz if you bother to look and test properly. That's all of yours as well. Go and have a look, get GPU-Z out. It's something for you to do when you've had too many beers at the weekend, just to have a, have a look. And make sure you do have the normal one. Make sure you have one open, because you can open more than one at once. Have one open with maximum, and then have one open with average. Go and play your games and have a look. But just remember, this is a little hint for you. If you're going to do the average, what you do is you literally go, you click it once, twice, 3 times. It goes min, max, average. Then open your game straight away. When you close your game, what you then need to do, don't spend too long in the menus, because it will still be dancing around. Get into the game as quick as you can, and then get to the desktop as quick as you can, and take a print screen. So if you do take a print screen or a screenshot, whatever you want to call it, then open that up and have a look, because the whole time that you're on your desktop, the average will be working its way down, because it's an average and it's not doing anything at the moment, so it will drop. Go and have a look at that, you'll be amazed. Anyway, so this, we gave it Performance Award, and I do think it deserves a Performance Award. Yes, we give the Strix the Enthusiast. We won't go into kind of comparing them directly, but this compared is so close. I do genuinely think it's value for money as well. And when you compare it to something like the Founders Edition, which yes, it's a quiet card, they're designed to be that way, but they're also designed to let themselves go to 85 degrees. We were getting this below 70 degrees. It was utterly quiet. And you saw in the video earlier, it took ages before running Unigine at 4K with 8 times AA before the fan even started. So it's a cracking card for the money. Yes, it's a lot of money, but when you compare it to the cheapest one to 720, and I've looked, it's 719 for a Founders Edition, or this is 759. If you're not going to water cool, I don't understand why you would want the Founders Edition. And to be honest with you, the other thing to think about is, yes, you're going to be able to buy water blocks and stuff. And the Founders Edition is a great card, an absolute great card, and they've done a really good job on it. But you've seen all the extra power regs and everything on this as well. So if you were thinking about overclocking because it's water, then would you want to be using the standard one, or would you want to be using the over-engineered one? Because that's basically what it is. It's over-engineered. And that's just so if it gets hot, it's going to last longer. That's so that, you're going to get cleaner power going through all the time. It's the components aren't going to be getting particularly stressed. Which one would you want to go for? And I think when it comes down to £40 difference at this price bracket, I don't know why you'd want to go with the Founders Edition, if I'm particularly honest. So it's up to you. There's obviously a lot of brands out there. This is just one of them. I just think that there's a fairly good case of why this should at least be on your top 3 shortlist. So anyway, I'm going to leave that with you. It's been a nice review. It's been cracking to work with Aorus again as well. I can say that we've got the Extreme coming next week. So if that's the one that you're looking at, we will be covering that. So we're going to be able to see whether it's got all of the extra bits filled in on the back of the PCB, behind the back plate and everything. So we're going to be taking a look at that one as well. And we're going to be giving it the same work over, stripping it all down, all that sort of stuff. So maybe you want to come back for that. You also might want to keep an eye on the channel, because next week, the 11th, Ryzen 5. Anyway, Ryzen 5 925. It's just a shame, isn't it? It was 7 to 5. It worked in my head. I just wanted to sing. Anyway, go on.